The topic of today's session is content marketing, unlock the key to digital marketing success in 2017. Leveraging content to impact one or two metrics in your entire customer lifecycle is fairly easy. For example, you can tweak your content a bit and try to increase the number of downloads, or possibly increase the number of people who are talking about you, sharing about you on social media. But making content fulfill your business objective sustainably is not an easy task. And that is what digital content marketing is all about. In today's session, we are going to look at why content marketing has become an indispensable skill set for marketers. Also, we are going to learn the basics of how to approach and set up a content strategy. To lead this session, we have here with us Virginia Sharma. Virginia is the Director of Marketing Solution at LinkedIn India. Before joining LinkedIn, she had to her credit 15 years of experience in the marketing industry and has won several awards, including Asia's Most Influential CMOs in 2015 by CMO Asia. It is my privilege to welcome you here, Virginia, and I'm sure all the marketers are going to benefit a lot from your learnings today. Thanks a lot for joining in and taking time out. So before we continue further and I hand over the session to Virginia, I just wanted to quickly set up the logistics. Right now, there are close to 160 participants who are present in today's session, and more will be joining in soon. So just to make sure that things works fine, we have by default muted everybody. We're going to have a presentation for about 30 to 40 minutes, followed by 20 minutes of Q&A. While going through the presentation, if you have any question, just type it down in the question panel, and we'll try to take as many questions as possible during the Q&A session. Now, to start, just to understand who all is present today, I'm just throwing a poll question on your screen. Pick up an option that best describes your current professional experiences, and I would request all of you to respond to this, and I'll share the results with everybody also. If you're somebody who's related to B2B domain, that's where your experience is, then you can pick up the first option. If or B2C domain, for the B2B domain, you can pick up the second option. If you're from agency background, you can pick up the third option. Or if you do not have any professional experience so far, you've been out of job for quite some time or you're a student, you can pick up the last option. I'll just count till 5 and I'll close the poll. I would request all of you to please respond to it. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Thank you very much. So here are the results. Of all the people who are present today, 34%. So if you're from the B2C domain, you are the one who's dominating. If you're from B2B domain, you're the second most popular set of audience who are present today. And if you do not have any professional experience, that's a 21%. And the last is people from agency background, that's 15%. So that's it from my side. Virginia, over to you. You can take the conversation further.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, and good afternoon, everybody. I am very, very excited about kicking off 2017 talking about one of my favorite topics, content marketing. You know, I've been in and around the digital marketing space for probably 15 years. My journey started when I created my first video for YouTube. This was even before Google bought YouTube. So have been dabbling in this space sort of before it became a mainstream thing. Before I start, I will say that I will be drinking water throughout because of my voice, but hopefully you can hear me clearly, and hopefully my enthusiasm will come through as well. So let's get started. So what are we going to first try and talk about? And you know, looking at having done many sessions, a lot of people kind of understand content marketing in the realm of its own domain, but reality, it's one of the many digital marketing techniques. And in 2017, it looks like it continues to be exciting and one of the top-rated digital marketing techniques, even higher than marketing automation, mobile marketing. And you must be wondering, you know, where did this thing come out of nowhere and everybody's talking about it? And what I'm going to try and do in this session is really help you figure out where to start with content marketing, because otherwise it becomes a very big and daunting thing. There's a debate amongst people to say that content marketing is advertising, content marketing is events, everything is content marketing. So what I'm going to try and do for you as a practitioner or someone who's learning is, how do you actually start your journey in content marketing in a way that you can demonstrate success early in your organization? And we're going to talk about that. But going off this chart, you can see it is number one. But the reality is, putting aside the data on it being number one, there's something very intrinsically, it's intuitive about why content marketing is growing, which is that we always say that marketing should feel like a service and not an interruption. It's something I've learned from a leader in the industry who founded Unica and an ex-IBM colleague. And marketing that doesn't feel like an interruption, content plays a very good role there. So if you read this quote by Craig Davis, we need to stop interrupting what people are interested in and be what people are interested in, really brings to life that particular statement. And content really helps you focus on acting like a service as you deliver content that is valuable to your audiences through their buyer journey. If you think about the last time you watched a video on YouTube and you saw a piece of advertising at the beginning or in the middle, sometimes it didn't feel like a service. It felt more like an interruption. Content tries to do something different, where the content served up to you is only served up at the point that you actually need it to make the decision that you have. So it has to be in the context of what you were doing at the time or the decision you're making at the time. So I mentioned at the beginning that content is so big that I'm going to try and dispel down one concept in content marketing that I consider to be a quick win for people just starting to dabble in this. When people think about content marketing, they think about, I should create a video or do a blog post or do some kind of website with a lot of content or a piece of collateral that is of value, like white papers, etc. But that is tactical, and that's the content that ultimately becomes where you drive people to. But sometimes people get discouraged when they do that because maybe only 5 people watch the video or 10 people download the white paper, and they stop doing it. So they get discouraged. And so my first and most important thing that I hope you take away from this session is that it is as important to amplify the content that you create as it is creating the content itself. That is the number one thing you need to remember. A lot of people get so caught up on that perfect piece of content that forget to let people know that they have it. Now, there are expensive ways to promote your content, and there are less expensive ways and better ROI ways. And I really believe, in my experience as a marketer for 17 years, that native advertising is probably one of the most ROI effective ways to do content marketing. And we'll talk a little bit about that over the next 10 minutes. So what is native advertising? You've probably heard a lot about native advertising. Native advertising is a portion of your content marketing program. Content marketing as a strategy is much bigger. Native advertising is, I think, one of the most successful types of content marketing. And why is it? Because it's paid advertising that is produced and published in a way that it resembles editorial content. Sometimes it's also known as sponsored content. So if you read this quote from Tim Dugan, it's native advertising is quality content inspired by a brand, but delivered in the stream, which is the simplest way to explain it. Now, when you think about content marketing, why is it that you need to find ways that are successful types of content marketing like native? It's because ultimately what it comes down to is that people are all trying to deliver ROI. And if you look at the data, it says over here, various types of proof points, right? Almost 8 times growth in unique traffic for those brands using content marketing. We also know that buyer behavior is changing. People are engaging with almost 10 pieces of content before contacting a sales representative. Interestingly, that's not just true for B2B, but it's also true for high consideration B2C. There's also 62% less cost than traditional marketing, which really matters in an environment where you get asked a lot of questions about why are we doing what we're doing. Performance marketing has really become a really important thing no matter what size of business you're in. And companies with an active blog report 97 more leads. So you have to go back and say, do you have 10 pieces of content along the buyer journey? Do you have a blog, right? And finally, conversion rates, right? We're seeing better conversion rates, almost 6 times better. And you must wonder, how is it possible to deliver these types of results through something that seems arguably intuitive, which is you write a piece of content, you put it out there, people read it, and it drives the type of results. And the reason is because people are adopting native formats that really work, that have a lot of data behind them that show that they're effective. So let me tell you about the different types of native advertising formats. In-feed units, paid search units, promoted listings, standard ads, content recommendation widgets. And what some of these examples are, content recommendation widgets are things like Outbrain and Taboola. There's also custom campaigns. Usually you would do that within a particular network like Facebook or LinkedIn or Twitter. Standard ads like you would normally do, but they have native element units as well, which are built into the feed. And paid search units are things like what you see on Yahoo or Bing or Google even. So I think these are a lot of different formats, and the data that you saw on the previous page is really possible because digital advertising, particularly native advertising, really allows you to collect the data that shows the return better than other types of advertising. So what are the types of metrics that you can actually measure? Now, there's many types of social media metrics that people use to measure content marketing, but the predominant one is click-through rate, CTRs. So if you are just starting to get used to content marketing and native advertising, probably focusing on click-through rates is a really good place to go. A lot of business unit leaders or GMs, if you're trying to justify ROI, also want to talk about leads. And so it is also important to have a good marketing automation engine or a lead scoring engine at the back end of any content marketing campaign that you do to be able to see that the leads that you generate or the traffic or the clicks that you generate move all the way through the funnel. So let me kind of move ahead on some broader discussion, and I've been talking about native advertising as a type of content marketing. So, why is it that people are looking at this, and how is it that native advertising is different, and why has it taken content marketing by storm? So what it does is that it has this amazing ability to take great client-owned content and embed it into the user experience. What do I mean by that? In the visual design of this particular type of content, it's actually integrated seamlessly into the visual design of online advertising. It's part of the content. You cannot differentiate the editorial and your feed from native advertising. So it doesn't feel like an interruption. If you are a professional on your way to work and you're reading various articles and there's a sponsored article by a particular brand, it is actually in your feed. It's not on the margins. And therefore, it's positioned so that it's worthy of the same attention as editorial content. In addition to that, it is not, because as I mentioned earlier, it's not relegated to the margins. It actually captures the attention of the audience, and it gets a lot more time on it than a typical ad. It has been proven through neuroscience that people are now essentially glossing over banner ads. And so when you create your content and you only push it out and promote it through banner ads, you may not even get any kind of visits at all. You really need to be able to have people engage with micro content that really drives you to what we call the big rock content. And the most important thing about native advertising and content is that it leverages existing audiences on existing platforms. When you create content for your website, you have to also put a lot of budget in terms of attracting people, the right type of traffic to your website. You spend on search, you spend on advertising, you do email campaigns. When you do native advertising, you create content that you put into the feed of LinkedIn or Facebook or other such platforms. And because it's in the feed, the audience is already there. You're not paying to bring in new audiences. And you really have an effective way to target those audiences with the right kind of content. and vice versa, using your content, find the right type of audiences. So this can end up leading to large audiences that you find existing versus building your own audiences. So that's an example. Now, the reality is native advertising done right really complements your other parts of your content marketing efforts when it offers valuable, educational, useful information. So content marketing that actually feels like a service will end up doing well and delivering the ROI that I showed you earlier. Now, why is it that people feel that this is effective? The reality is that our industry has been seeing lower CTRs through traditional advertising over the last few quarters, and people are really, quite frankly, turned off by traditional online advertising. In addition to that, with the growth of mobile, the smaller screens means that people are not actually even seeing the traditional display type units that were always more created for browser-based interfaces. So it almost makes traditional ad placement very awkward when you actually have a mobile screen that is much, much smaller. In addition to that is that we're seeing more and more people are going to their newsfeed, not just to look at updates from their network, but also educational and professional information. We're seeing, for example, at LinkedIn, 15 times more consumption of content on the platform than job postings, which tells you that people are really changing their content consumption behavior. And finally, brands are becoming publishers. It's no longer relegated to media sites. Many brands are creating and are expected to create by their consumers valuable content that help their users and their prospects make their decisions. And so, when you think about it, it's not just changes in the behavior of the audiences, but, there's a lot of benefits to brands to go this way as well, right? The first benefit is that brands who can connect with and provide valuable information to consumers in a highly relevant context are going to build that lasting relationship with their audience. It also boosts brand image because people trust brands who provide them information that help them make better decisions. So for all these reasons, we've seen a real uptake, but the key word that you see on this chart is native advertising has to be done right. There's a lot of bad native advertising or content marketing out there where people are spending a lot of money and a lot of effort and they're just not seeing the returns. So when you think about it, what does native advertising look like when it's done right? It's really about two things, and I've mentioned this before, I'll mention it again. It's about creating that content, but it's also about amplifying it by placing it in the right location. So they need to create the story that people are interested in. It should be either educative, entertaining, or informative, but it needs to be in an environment that people are already engaging. See, what's happened with people is people are going to max 4 to 5 mobile applications on their phone in a given day. 80% of your time is spent clicking on about 5 applications on your screen. So when they go there, that's where you need to capture them. If you're taking them out of those environments and expecting them to download a new app outside of Facebook or outside Google, outside LinkedIn and other platforms, you're really asking them to make a lot of effort, and you're asking them to do things that is not natural to them. So you really should focus on where they're engaging. So if you focus on these two things, creation, quality creation, and location, you're going to improve the ROI of your broader content campaigns. And so how would you go about doing this? My recommendation is to do 3 easy things. Start with your website. Take owned content from your own content hub, take a white paper, take a microsite, take a blog, and market it directly to the users on these platforms by giving them teaser content. So if you've got a 15-page white paper, do a 1-page executive summary or small paragraph or small video and drive them to the 15-pager. Ungate the content you put on your native advertising platforms and drive them to the gated content to get leads. The second thing is, when you start looking at the people who are engaging with this content, amplify it to a similar lookalike audience on the platform because you know it works for that audience. So look at the analytics of that piece of content and make sure that you actually find lookalike audiences. See, what happens is people get so married to the content and so emotional about the content they create They don't look at the analytics to say who's actually engaging with that content. So they're always committed to saying, hey, I really believe I know what CIOs want. I've created a white paper, and no matter who else is engaging with this piece of content, I'm going to market it to CIOs. What if developers really like that piece of content? It's better off that you actually market that piece of content for developers because you know it's working for them. And go and create different content for CIOs. And, before you hit, and this is one other very important tip, before you go down this path of native advertising, you have to go through the hard work of developing a complete content marketing strategy. What is in a content marketing strategy? You need to include your brand objectives. Is it awareness? Is it leads? Is it brand loyalty? Is it repeat users? Is it retention of existing customers? Is it increasing wallet share or size of deal, reducing the sales cycle? Whatever that is, you need to be able to articulate that up front. You need to demonstrate and put together a very clear editorial calendar of what conversation you want to have with your audience. Once you decide that brand strategy, you need to have content creation processes and agencies in-house or outside that will provide you this content in a timely fashion. And you need to decide how to measure it. And you need to decide if you're going to focus on upper funnel metrics or go all the way down the funnel. This is before you ever create your first piece of content. My goal over here with this webinar is really to get you off on the right foot, because it's in my interest, much like many of us in the industry, that you have a great first experience when you go down the path of content marketing and that you're successful from day one. It's very, very important to us that when you see the success, that you actually build on that success and do even better, which is why I'm emphasizing things you need to do before you get started. So, what I want to bring together is, I hope by now you're excited about the idea of the success you can see from content marketing overall and native advertising in particular as what I call a quick win that I've seen in my career, and many people have as well, because it's proven results. But let's say you want to get started tomorrow, or even this afternoon if you get excited. Start by understanding your personas and your audience. Make sure you understand what their needs are and what you're trying to do. Create the content for that audience. Figure out how to amplify that content, and finally measure effectiveness. There will be future modules on this particular set of frameworks. In fact, we're partnering very closely with Digital Vidya and other partners as part of the Content Marketing Council, of which I'm the chairperson, to create master classes, both online and offline, to teach professionals on how to actually execute a content marketing program along the lines of these 4 cells. So if you are interested, please do register for one of the Digital Vidya courses or join the Content Marketing Council. And to go further, what I'm going to give you is some light tips, which are covered in much greater detail in the actual master classes. But here are some examples of content that works best: white papers, webinars, reports, commentary, opinion pieces, video content, blog posts, digital image galleries, listicles, and how-to guides. Obviously, this is very generic. The reality is that there's going to be some decisions, like buying a car, that are much more involved than trying to buy potentially, a weighing scale online. Obviously, buying, a SaaS product is very different than buying an on-premise product if you're in B2B, as half of you are. So this is very high-level guidance. As you build out your personas and as you attend these classes, you will learn more about the different techniques of the different types of use cases. But I'll say one thing based on my experience. A lot of people ask me to say, tell me the best content marketing that works. And I've seen thousands of content marketing campaigns, and it actually isn't based on the type of content. It's based on the business objective. Sometimes a white paper works for one brand and doesn't work for the other because the business objective is different. So really, this has to be put in the context of the program framework that I showed you on the previous page. So in the last 5 minutes or so, we said that we would do this for 30 minutes. I want to go through 10 rules of effective native advertising. And I hope some of these resonate with you. Very easy, right? The first one is accurately determine your target audience. There's 2 sides of this. One is your target audience cannot be too narrow or too broad, right? I get a lot of brands that come to me and say, we are looking for decision makers in the wealth management space who have this much budget in this city. And when you work with native advertising, you need to have just the right balance of being highly targeted. Of course, we can find those people. But if you're going to spend the money on content and you only find 10 people that fit that target audience, that doesn't make sense. Obviously, it should start with your brand objective and the content that you create, and then finding the audience that is appropriate for that. But I'll give you a little hack. And I'll give you a hack on LinkedIn. Look at your followers on LinkedIn. Of your organic followers that have been following your company pages, if you have it. If you don't have a company page, set one up. You can set one up for free. You might only have a couple of hundred followers initially. That's fine. Put organic content on your company page and see who's actually engaging with that content. That will give you a really good sense of the kind of audiences that follow your brand and engage with your content. That will tell you who is an affinity for your brand and who has an affinity for that type of content. Then use paid or native advertising to amplify that type of content. So use your followers as a good test case to figure out who is your target audience. Sometimes our target audience are unlikely audiences, but quite frankly, they play very important roles in the decision making. The second rule, establish a strong understanding of the publisher's audience. Let me give you an example. LinkedIn is fantastic for the professional audience, but not just because they're professional, but also the context. People on LinkedIn don't come for infotainment. They don't like jokes and quizzes and personal updates. They go to different networks for that, right? Likewise, some other networks are much better for that type of content. So people come, for example, LinkedIn has 400 million members. So that's what we've come to be known to be good at. So it's good for you to know that before you actually leverage the platform, because you'll actually create the content in the context of a professional's day in terms of what makes them productive and successful. Tip number 3, create valuable, useful, authentic content that actually your audience will want to engage with and that will enable your brand to become a trusted advisor. Why this is important goes back to the very beginning of this webinar. You want your marketing to feel like a service and not an interruption. You also want people to amplify the content because they liked it within their networks. That is earned media that's free to you because of the quality of your content. Number 4, ensure that your content matches the look and feel of the host website. Let's say that you're using a media website that targets finance professionals, and they're used to receiving content in a certain way related to showcasing numbers, more videos. Just make sure that if you want to feel like you're integrating into the native look and feel of that site, that you get the details from that particular host website or publisher on what are the dimensions of the rich media, how long are the words, get some best practices of headlines and things like that. So learn and push publishers as well as whoever you're actually hosting your content with so that you can actually be able to take the most advantage of them. Number 5, use content that actually creates a connection that will lead to consideration in the future and bring prospective customers into your lead funnel. The reality is that a lot of people think that, if they create one piece of killer content, one viral video, somebody's going to go ahead and actually, buy right then. That's not true. The reality is that you're going to really use content to nurture your audiences, and it may end up being that they will need many more pieces of content before they make a decision. We oftentimes also see that people consume content, go and put something in a shopping cart and are about to buy, but then to validate, they go back to see reviews, right? This is human nature in terms of post-purchase dissonance. They want to be completely sure, which is why Amazon puts a lot of content on the checkout page, reviews, pricing, similar products, what other people have viewed, all in the same screen. You want to make sure people never leave the page, so make sure your content is created so you're really connecting and capturing them regardless of where they are in the funnel. Number 6, be transparent and upfront. Look, you're not native advertising. You don't want to deceive people into believing that it's editorial. It is paid. It is paid by your brand and or by yourself. So it's important that you actually say that it's sponsored content. People will appreciate that a lot more than if they find out later that it was a paid placement. You don't want to be shady about these kind of things. It hurts the trust factor with the brand. The last 3, time your campaign so that it delivers to the right content, right audience, right content at the right time to the right audience. You know, many networks will give you analytics that your particular network or audience goes online at 10 a.m. on Tuesday morning. You should actually time your campaign so it goes live then. There's no point doing something just because you finished a video on Friday evening and your network is not online on Friday evening. Maybe you should wait until Monday to put it up. Number 8, use the right native partner. We've talked about this. Using the right partner can boost your credibility by 33%. We oftentimes see many brands that come to LinkedIn to promote campaigns that are really not that relevant to our members. You know, we're a member-first company. We have to protect our members and we have to respect the fact that they come to our platform. So our credibility as a publisher or a platform is as much at line as your brand's. And so we'll partner together to figure out whether we're right for you or not. And the last 2, invest in professional editorial support to really ensure that your content matches the tone of your host. You know, skills and talent are very, very important in any content marketing strategy. I'm so happy to see several hundred people on this because each of you will have to go back and make sure that you find the right type of team members, partners, agencies. I was very happy to see agency folks here because they can actually also help you write things in the right tone. Sometimes at LinkedIn we get white papers, but the way you maybe promote a white paper on LinkedIn may be different than, for example, what you promote on TechTarget, for example. Important that you know the difference. And finally, make your brand the star, right? Advertise your content, not your company. And to be a star, sometimes the best way to be a star is to let that light shine through from what you have to say and not what your name is. So, you know, it's through your acts and not through your brand that you're going to be able to really demonstrate that connection with the audience. So just to summarize what we did today, we really, and I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to start putting in questions and we'll start going through them in a minute. But what I tried to do today is talk to you a little bit about content marketing, why it's taken our industry by storm, why advertisers and brands and agencies are so excited about it. Native advertising was just one quick win and a way for you to start seeing early success with native advertising. I tried to give you a framework, albeit at a high level, around how to build a content marketing program, which includes native advertising. And I tried to give you some tips of effective campaigns. Look, we have much more to talk about. We have much more we can say. I could talk about content marketing forever. So, you know, always reach out to me on Twitter, on LinkedIn. I'm always there to help anybody who's trying to make content marketing an integrated part of their strategy. A lot of us are here to help you. So without further ado, Kapil, let's take a look at the questions.
Great. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Virginia, for the very, very informative sessions. So there are a few questions already posted, so I'll just read it out for your benefit. There were a couple of questions related to the content type. Let me start with the easier one first. Almas has posted, what about infographic? I think you missed that as a content type while you were listing it earlier. So is it something that you think is not important or?
Oh, well, thank you for catching that. I did miss infographic. I love infographics. I think infographics is a wonderful way to communicate. But the interesting thing about infographics is that they haven't quite figured out how to do mobile-friendly infographics. In fact, I'm looking forward to seeing, and I welcome you all writing me if you've seen anybody that does a really good job of infographics in a mobile fashion, because infographics, if not done well, tend to become very small print, and they tend to show up as PDFs. PDFs or images that are that small are not that visible in the feed. So what's very important is that when you're doing infographics, they tend to do much better on your own website than within the feed, because you have the ability to click on something and enlarge it, whereas in native feeds, you can't actually enlarge, something on your post, right? You have to zoom in. So I think I picked and chose the things that are good for native advertising. That's not to say that someone that shouldn't come up with a good way to actually do that. Now, with that said, we still see many brands use infographics in the feed, and diehard followers click on it, zoom on it, and so on and so forth. But I think my opinion is reserve infographics for emails and also gated content or on your own website.
Got it. Another question related to content type is by Shehnaz Imam, sorry. The question is that, is there any rating or scorecard on which content category works best and ranking in order of preference? While video is the most preferred, how do we assess the authenticity of these claims?
So ratings, sorry, just maybe Kapil, maybe you can help me decipher the question a little bit.
Yeah, so I think what he wants to know is there is various content types. What is there any kind of a rating or scorecard that this should work in my case and that should not? What is the best, and if there is any preference order that we should follow in terms of content types?
So I think the best way that I do it is that when you look at your buyer journey and you look at your buyers, um, I do it two ways. I basically first focus on what's the message and what is the content that I do want to communicate. For example, for a young professional, let's say an early career starter. Let's take that as an example. An early career starter, what the way they consume content and what they want to know in an early career is different than someone who's maybe a senior executive, right? Now, you can't say that a video works for one and a video doesn't work for the other. What really matters is what type of video, what's the content in the video. A lot of people say the attention span of today's audience is like a goldfish. Videos should only be 1 minute. That's not true. If the video is valuable, for example, in the case of cars, people will give you up to 3 minutes and 40 seconds on average for a car review. If it's a valuable car review, if they're in the middle of a buying decision, they will give you that much time. So to answer your question in a different way, let me give you a way that I've done it. I have taken the same content and I've put it into a few different formats. I've done a video, same message as an infographic, same message as an executive summary, same message as a slide share. I will put it out on LinkedIn as an organic piece of content and I'll test it. I'll see which of these pieces of content do the best. And then basis on that, I will actually use my budget, my limited budget, to only promote the one that worked best for that audience. What's wonderful about digital is that you can A/B test without it being like a scary thing. If after 24 hours more people watch the video than downloaded the infographic, you have the answer for that particular audience. So the right answer is really A/B test, take about 100 people, see what the response rate is of the different type. But the main thing is that are you clear on what you're trying to tell an early career starter? It should be same kind of thing, whether it be a video or a slideshare or something else. You can't A/B test two different messages in two different mediums. You have to keep one thing constant.
Virginia, there are a lot of questions related to targeting. So I'll just read out some of them, and I'm sure a lot of these questions you will be answering every day. Shweta has a question. Product like SAP, for example, may have very narrow base in terms of target audience on LinkedIn. Any recommendation on whether targeting decision makers or CFOs may make sense? If we broaden the TG, then it may spill over. So that's, I think, one question that has been asked. Another question is by Naveen. While defining the audience, there could be many niche audience, for example, librarians of high school market. How to tackle this to amplify content? I think what you mentioned sometime back related to making it the right size. People are a little confused about it, so it would be great if you could just spend a little more time on how to define the right target audience.
Great. Very good questions. So there's a lot of people, the thing about digital is you can actually get very specific and micro-targeted on a platform like LinkedIn because we have a lot of data about people, right? And it's pretty authentic data. The problem is that we call it the purple squirrel syndrome, whether it be looking for talent or looking for the right target audience, which is when you get too narrow, you're looking for the purple squirrel and you may not find it, right? So we've done some things in IT. Let me take the SAP example first. We have done an IT committee buyer group where we've looked at the analytics and we've said, if this is the decision maker, which is maybe CIOs, who are the other roles that are related to this buying decision that could also influence this decision? Because if you look at a typical tech decision in a company, there's on average 5 to 8 people who are involved in the decision, from the business unit, from finance, sometimes the users, the practitioners, procurement. And so when you think about committee decision making, which has become more and more popular in B2B, you can't just target one role. In fact, if you go talk to the CIO, they will actually say, hey, I have to convince my CFO, I don't know if the users will actually use this technology, will buy this technology, it'll still sit on the shelf. I really need to get buy-in from the marketing team. If I use marketing automation and nobody uses it, what's the point? And so I think that there's broad-based understanding that you need to reach between 5 and 8 decision makers, at least in IT. Now, you can select those audiences yourself and build a custom audience yourself. Or you can say, hey, LinkedIn, can you give me the IT committee buyer group? Now, I think the second part of the question is around, finding librarians. My recommendation is that we now do what we call groups targeting. So as you know, LinkedIn has a lot of groups, and groups can be very specific. You will find librarians that have created a group. Why they've created a group, we don't know. We're happy that they've created a group, but they love being in a group together. So I would say that the best thing to do is to not use demographic targeting or company-based targeting or title-based targeting, but instead go for groups-based targeting. We are adding more and more functionality for behavioral targeting. For example, there's a lot of people that consume content, let's say on cloud, right? Their job titles vary, their years of experience vary, but they all care about cloud. They're writing, reading, sharing, commenting about cloud. That's interesting, right? So we're now just on the cusp of seeing for some of our clients who are really sophisticated, whether they want to adopt behavioral targeting. I would not recommend behavioral targeting if you're early in your journey. You have to be a little more sophisticated in terms of your content, because that means that you really have to have an always on program with cloud content to like penetrate that conversation. But I would say use groups targeting. I think it's wonderful. It's been very popular. That's the way I would go about that. But I think to clarify my point earlier, there is such a thing as going too broad, but there is such a thing as going too narrow as well. And so you have to find the right balance between the two.
By the way, guys, there are more than 300 odd participants and I have close to 60 to 70 odd questions in front of me. I'm trying to sort of aggregate questions so that we can take care of most of the concerns. The next set of questions are actually related to the ROI. You remember initially you mentioned that people spend a lot of time creating content and they don't spend too much in amplifying it and then they give up on this. And so at different times you have a sort of a figure out what could be the right metrics to measure the ROI. So there are a few questions in this regard. One by Pranav. I asked this from a solopreneur point of view rather than the company point of view. When you talk about measuring the effectiveness of the content marketing, can you elaborate on this? And I think if you could just sort of look at various stages, if you're just starting with content marketing initiatives, you mentioned CTR as one of the important metrics. So should that be the metrics? Because I've seen most of the people just calculate the acquisition cost, and if it is not working out within the first month, they give up on this. So how should you really approach the ROI with metrics to look at what stage, and for entrepreneurs to large companies? So if you could just a little bit elaborate on ROI, please, that will take care of a lot of questions.
Yeah, so to clarify, my CTR recommendation is purely for native advertising. I would not use CTR as your be-end-all measurement for all things content, because I think that, as you remember, I mentioned a complete content strategy starts with business objectives. And I think especially if you're an entrepreneur, I think you kind of first have to see where are you in your journey? Are you trying to build brand awareness? I get a lot of smaller B2B companies, tech companies that basically want to get leads, from Europe and the US because they've done well here and they want to, replicate that success. And they see LinkedIn as a way to reach, for example, international decision makers. But nobody's heard of these companies. So, you have to basically be realistic to say, do you have to work on brand awareness? And then there's a set of metrics, which are normal brand awareness metrics related to, and you can do brand impact studies for those type of things. So ROI in terms of brand awareness is familiarity with the brand. Have they heard of you? Will they consider you? When you go from top of the funnel to middle of the funnel, that's when you start measuring leads. And the most important thing about leads, especially for B2B folks on the phone, of which there was about 40%, is that leads for our sales teams mean very different things to very different salespeople. So some salespeople say a lead is when I literally have to go and pick up the order. A lead is when you've also set up the time of my appointment to go to the customer, and they pretty much are happy to meet me. For some brands, a lead is someone who fills out a form. A lead could be someone who attends a webinar like this. A lead could be someone who's maybe clicked on contact me. So why it's very important to define what leads is in the context of your partnership with sales is that if you end up generating leads and the salespeople don't believe that's really a lead, right? They basically declare them junk leads. The point is there's no such thing as a junk lead. It's a lead, it's an expression of interest. Now, whether it matches what the sales team wants, and I've always told salespeople, if what you want is appointment setting of 10 o'clock you show up and somebody's ready to sign an order, I have a different marketing mix for someone who wants an appointment to pick up orders. I would not recommend content marketing necessarily for an organization that wants marketing to actually essentially get appointments booked for sales, right? That's a different technique altogether. It involves more telemarketing and probably even involves putting more salespeople on the ground. So I think that's the second part of middle of the funnel is leads, but what are the leads? And bottom of the funnel is really the cost. There's three metrics that I think are the best metrics for bottom of the funnel. One is what I call marketing contribution. At the beginning of the year, beginning of quarter, you need to decide based on how much you spend on marketing overall. Put aside content marketing for a second. I don't want to talk about it. Is to say what percentage of my new business should come from marketing initiatives, period. And the way I define this is say if tomorrow you get rid of your whole marketing team and you don't spend anything on marketing, what percentage of your pipeline disappears with them? It could be 10%, it could be 20%. I would say for B2B, you become relevant once you cross 20%. That's when they won't cut your budget and they won't make you disappear because it matters to them, it's meaningful. So when you actually figure out that your marketing contribution is X percent, marketing contribution converts to X amount of bookings revenue, right? 20% of $10 million is a certain number and so on and so forth, right? 20% is $5 million. Then you do the reverse math to say, to get to $5 million of win revenue based on my historical conversion metrics, I need to reach 400,000 people. You'll get to those metrics, right? Average deal size, conversion rates. You have to use your own data. Where are you going to find 400,000 people? It's not going to be events. It's not going to be telecalling. So what you want to be able to do is, before you get into an ROI discussion, is first say, how many people do I need to reach that marketing contribution number? And build a program that says, I'm going to do a mix of these 10 things to reach 400,000 people. Some digital, some events, some tele, some so on and so forth, in the budget that I get, right? That's when you start having a conversation of content marketing will play a role in reaching those 400,000 people through digital in a certain way. And content, by the way, doesn't just play a role at the top of the funnel of finding those 400,000 people. When you finally get down to sales qualified opportunities, the last mile, there's content that you have to use then as well, except it's content delivered in the form of an event. So it's very important that you actually, use content throughout the journey. But to answer your question is there's awareness metrics, there's middle of the funnel metrics, which is leads with the right definition of leads. And then there's bottom of the funnel, that starting point is marketing contribution. There are a lot of other metrics people will tell you. I've been a business leader. I run a P&L. I've worked with many GMs in my career. This is the only conversation that gives you time on a sales cadence. You talk about anything else, they're giving you courtesy time. This is the real conversation that happens.
Great. So next set of questions are actually related to tools. So somebody wants to ask the best analytical tool, best content marketing tool. So in terms of, from the tool perspective, is there some recommendation from your side?
Analytics and performance. Oh, I think that the best analytics are the ones that start with the story you want to tell. I think that the reality, and this is probably the fault of us platform folks, we have beautiful analytics. Us agency folks, we have amazing charts. We do very good data charts. And what happens is that ultimately speaking, you have to work backwards to say, there's a story that I'm trying to tell in my business around marketing's impact, either on loyalty or awareness. You have to basically tell us and say, okay, these are the things that I want to measure. And if it's awareness, typically you want a market study like with a Nielsen, or really more of that kind of research that basically shows, people who do well with brand studies. Very different, right? Brand impact studies are a different type of beast. Obviously, you need to use Google Analytics really, really well. And you should have people that are comfortable with that. But within every native platform, you will be able to have self-serve dashboards that give you the data. But if you're not careful, you're going to get seduced by all the data that the dashboard will give you. You need to come in knowing exactly what you want. The analogy that I use is when you go to these great Indian e-commerce sales, right? And you see the top deals, right? If you just start by saying, I want to see everything that is 60% off, you're going to start buying a lot of stuff that you don't need. But, you buy it because it's 60% off. The reality is, before you go into one of those mobile apps, you want to first say that I need to buy a washing machine, and say, I need to buy a washing machine. I need to replace these 3 things. Go in and look for the 60% off of those, right? Otherwise, there's metrics galore in digital. In fact, that's one of the burdens of digital. In fact, we have too many metrics, most of which that don't matter to the business. So once you do that, it'll be pretty obvious what are the tools that help you. So the answer is the best analytics machine is you. Is what is the story you have to tell, and let the metrics fit into the story you're trying to tell your business. Don't get excited by the tools. There's a lot of them.
Great. Numbers are what to choose the right one based on your objectives. Great. So there are still more than 100 questions in front of me. I don't know whether I will. At the same time, I'm just quickly also launching a poll on your screen side by side. As with Content Marketing Council, which is chaired by Virginia, we are launching a content marketing module also that will be available to everybody in Digital Vidya in all our courses. So just if you want to take any online course in digital marketing, you can just mention yes, no. If you're already participating, just mention that. By the time you're responding, I'm just taking up the next question. There's an interesting question from Nishant. He's saying that I want to ask, in India, we are looking Hindi content are working more. So what's your suggestion for Hindi content? Is there something that can be done on LinkedIn related to Hindi content?
Not on LinkedIn, but there are some wonderful opportunities to use vernacular content in some of the publications. The one thing that I would say about Hindi content is that it's still predominantly a TV and print market. Print and TV are still very much growing in that particular space. So I would say that, when you create Hindi content, it's quite important that you look at mediums. I'm seeing WhatsApp be a great way to distribute Hindi content. Essentially text-based marketing is still very, very important. So, this goes back to if you're trying to reach the audience in a native advertising way, you should use the platforms that they're already reading. If you try to use some of the platforms that they're not going to, it's a lot more effort to get a Hindi speaking audiences on it. So I'm starting to see a resurgence of radio. It's very exciting. But I'm also starting to see a resurgence of direct mail, uh, which, it's come full circle. People now like receiving mail because they receive so little that when they get something nice in the mail, try to drop something in people's homes. They're pretty delighted to receive it. I mean, now they like getting boxes from Amazon and Snapdeal. They also like getting that. So I would say that's content too. So I don't want you to always think that content delivered, good content marketing may not always be digital.
Great. Also, there was a question related to slide share. How do you recommend, is there slide share can be part of the content marketing strategy? Is there any suggestion related to that?
Yeah, you have a great presentation, put it on SlideShare. You have a bad presentation, don't put it on SlideShare. So don't put everything on SlideShare. But I would say that um, I'm not a big fan of putting up video presentations of events. Um, Sometimes people put in entire recordings of 40-minute presentations, especially technical, online. I still think that many people prefer seeing slides that are intuitive. So I would say that some of the best presentations that you should put on SlideShare are good for business development. If you're an entrepreneur and you have a pitch deck, make sure you put it on SlideShare and connect it to your LinkedIn profile. That's a great use case, right? So anything that intuitively tells the story without you having to present it, because in fact, most presentations have more content on them than they should. Obviously, my presentation today needed the voiceover, but many presentations don't. So I would recommend putting those up there. And quite frankly, just make sure that you do put your copyright and your brand as a watermark on your SlideShare, because you want to make sure that your brand is doing that. One of the beautiful things that I've seen people do, if you are generating beautiful graphics, create a graphics repository for people to, instead of trying to get snapshots of your slides, give it to them, let them embed it. But in the graphics of any kind of research or data, make sure that you put your brand so that you get appropriate attribution.
Great. Virginia, there are a lot of questions wherein people are asking domain-specific questions. Especially a lot of people are actually asking for examples for their domain. Will it work for travel domain? I think initially we asked this question, were you from B2B, B2C? If you have some, specific approach that one should take in their domain, how to identify whether it will work for them, any strategy difference that they should look at, if they're particularly from a particular industry, B2B or B2C or any other. So any recommendations on that or any examples you want to highlight?
I think it's a big question for the last 2 minutes, but I would highly recommend that you check out one of the Content Marketing Council masterclass instructors. LK Gupta has an amazing framework on how to think about, depending on the domain, it's not so much domain, but category of low involvement, high involvement purchases, and B2B and B2C. And so, for example, toothpaste is going to be deemed very differently than, for example, buying a car or buying a piece of software. And he has a very good framework online. If you, check out, LK Gupta online, or you check out the Content Marketing Council, we've got another round of classes coming to the Tier 1 cities for this particular masterclass in February. So you can drop, maybe we can find a way if we can send out a follow-on for anyone interested. I think we can promote it to you guys of the classes. It's a framework that says, when do you want learn content or education content? When do you want love content, which is really emotional content? And when do you want purchase content, which is content that specifically helps you make a purchase, which is around reviews and things like that. Depending on the category and depending on if it's an online or an offline product. So SaaS products are an online product, toothpaste is an offline product. So all these different, it's not just function, it's the product within the category, how it's purchased, the channel it's purchased, and whether it's a low involvement or high involvement decision. A car is actually a high involvement decision given the number of people involved to buy a car, even though it's a B2C, right? So, it behaves a lot like a SaaS product in some ways. So I would highly encourage you guys to look at some of these frameworks, but the answer comes down brand by brand based on what is it that you're trying to sell. And, LinkedIn or Facebook or any of the others are here to help you think through this in terms of what's the right mix. Your agency should be able to help you as well.
Great. As a next question, I think this would be relevant for everybody. A lot of people wants to know if you have any recommendation of content, like some particular blogs you follow, some books or YouTube channels, or anything that you would like to recommend.
Yeah. Well, the LinkedIn blog, I'm objectively seeing the LinkedIn Marketing Solutions blog is really excellent. Anything written by Jason Miller, fantastic. I really appreciate some of the very smart content that's on Contently, CONTENTLY.com, Contently. I also really like King Content, which is an agency out of Australia. I like their blog. The Content Marketing Council has just launched its website, and in the next coming months, we're going to be putting some very smart content up there as well, that basically curates the content that's of interest. So, and a most recent piece of content and thought leadership research we've put out through the Content Marketing Council is the top 10 content marketing trends for 2017. So, if you go online, you can download that very, very easily. I would say that gives you a sense of the direction content marketing is going. It's a curated view of the top content marketing trends from around the world.
Great. So I think there are lots and lots of content, questions that are left. So I would recommend the best would be that you guys can reach out to Virginia over Twitter, and probably she will be able to reply back. If there is something that is really, really urgent and you know it can't wait, you really want an answer, I would suggest just put the hand raise button and I'll individually unmute you and you can ask your question. So if there is something that's really, really important for you, got it, Satish? I'm just unmuting you. Yeah, Satish, what's your question? Satish, I've unmuted you. What's your question? Not sure whether. Yeah. Satish? Satish, are you there? Looks like your mic is not working, Satish. So I'm just muting you again. Looks like there's some disturbance at your end. There is one question from your side in the question panel, and it says modest budget for a startup to reach 1 million audience on LinkedIn. That's the question from Satish, Virginia. Looks like Virginia has gone offline. There was some net connectivity issue. So Satish, what I'll do is I'll just forward this question to Virginia, and probably she will be able to respond back later. And I think she's back now. Just a minute. Everybody just hold on for a minute. We'll have Virginia back to take this last question. Hi, Virginia. Good to have you back. So there was a question from Satish, and the question is that modest budget for a startup to reach 1 million audience on LinkedIn. Yeah, I can't hear you. You're not audible, Virginia. Just hold on, everybody. We'll try to figure out solution to this. Virginia, are you able to hear me? Looks like Virginia can't hear me as well. So Satish, I'll forward this question to Virginia in that case, and as soon as I get a reply from her, I'll come back to you. Right. So that's it from our side. And at this point of time, I really want to thank all of you. If your question is still remaining, it's not answered, I'm extremely sorry. We would be doing a blog post on this. You can just post in the comment section and someone from our team will address it. But if you want Virginia to address it, I think the best approach would be you can just follow her on Twitter, and possibly she will be able to reply back uh, whenever she gets time. So that's all. That's it from my side. Thanks everybody for your participation, and I really want to thank Virginia for taking time out. If she could hear me, thanks a lot, Virginia, for taking time out today. So that's it from my side. The session is now closed. Thanks a lot. Virginia, if you can hear us, you can say last words as well. Looks like there is some issue at our end. So thanks everybody. The session is now closed. Thank you very much.